too much power. That's not an indictment of Kevin. That's an indictment of the House of Representatives and what has occurred over the last.
But you don't think that guts the job of Speaker?
No, I certainly do not. I think what it does is it empowers all the members, and it probably makes the job easier for the Speaker of the House. Listen, what everybody is seeing, you saw it a couple of weeks ago, where you have 4 members decide, oh, I'm gonna cut this deal, I'm gonna cut that deal. That doesn't work for anybody. It doesn't. And so what happened, the reason why you can do that is because too much power is invested in the hands of too few people here in Washington. That is not what the framers intended. They intended for a body where powers are diffused, just the same way the electoral process works. And so what we have done here, we believe, is transformative work to get the People's House back to where it belongs.
And so besides the motion to vacate, what are some of the other tenets that are part of this framework?
There are tenets around serious budgetary reforms, because, look, inflation is hurting every American. The price of food is up. The price of utilities is up. And so one of the key elements of that is overspending here in Washington, D.C. So we have some very good structural reforms around that, and also giving members the ability to make spending cuts, which I know my friends on the other side of the aisle don't like to do, but the realities are the same. We're $32 trillion in debt, and there is no pathway at this time in the House of Representatives to begin to curtail that. This package gets us on that ability to do that, so we can actually save not just American families today, but the earnings of future Americans who have yet been born.
I know the leader is being renominated as we speak. Do you think in this next round he will get more votes?
That remains to be seen, and we're going to continue to work on this thing. But I want the American people to understand that this process, as has been described, is not chaos. This is what true deliberation looks like. This is what true compromise looks like. This is the thing that so many voters have said they want to see out of Washington. And so instead of doing everything by acclamation, what we have done the last 3 days, in my view, is a new era in how the American people's voice can be heard through the people that they sent here to represent them.
Very quickly, do you think you can flip any other members based on this agreement that you've reached today, specifically these people who have just been hardline no's all the way?
Look, I believe so, and understand, my colleagues who are still in the no column, they are earnest people who truly believe that they can make America a better place for all people. And so the path that they might be on is one because they believe that's what's in the best interest. Now, myself and other members, we're going to continue to have that dialogue and see and try to get there and end up there. But I don't want to diminish them because they were elected just like I was. They have the same passions just like I do. And then what we're going to do is come to an agreement and a compromise, which is what you do in legislative bodies, to make sure that we then get to the business of serving the American.
You think that'll happen by the end of the day, by this weekend, early next week?
Come on, you guys know I don't put timetables on this stuff. I think that it's going to occur. That is, let me just say that it will happen. The timetables, okay, because what have we seen this week? Everybody's focused here. People have been living their lives. I was talking to my sons yesterday, talked to my wife this morning. They're still living their life like every other American is. We're going to resolve this, and then we're going to get down to business.
All right. Thank you, Congressman. Appreciate it very much. All right. So you just heard there from Congressman Byron Donalds, again, of Florida, who is very confident that this framework agreement that he and other members have reached with McCarthy and his team, that will be sufficient to at least try to move the ball forward, that they still need to continue to have dialogues to kind of iron out some of the nitty-gritty, the details of this framework that they have started to put together. It still, obviously, though, remains a big question as to whether or not that can convince some of these hardline no votes, people like Matt Gaetz or Bob Good, who have just said time and again that they will not elect Leader McCarthy, whether or not this will be enough to move them, because ultimately Kevin McCarthy still needs some of those opponents in order to claim the speakership. But as you hear, at least there is some progress to report this afternoon. Back to you.
And Nicole, that's much more than we've been able to report all week as far as getting closer to a conclusion. For our viewers joining us now, it's 2 p.m. here on the East Coast. President Biden is expected to hold a special event in honor of those described as heroes from 2 years ago, the January 6th insurrection. That we will bring to you when it takes place. But, Elaine, we're watching now as momentum builds toward Kevin McCarthy, and Nicole spells out that certain concessions have been made.
Yeah, and, you know, Nicole, I wanted to ask if we still have you. It was interesting to listen to your conversation with Representative Donalds when he was describing those who are still continuing their opposition to Kevin McCarthy for Speaker, describing them as earnest people who believe that they can make America a better place. And I wonder what else you can tell us about sort of the larger picture here. For those who remain opposed to Kevin McCarthy, is it simply policy, or is there, as some have suggested, a bit of personal animus as well?
Well, I think it's both of those things. I mean, I think you could get a sense of that when you watch this last round where Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz really made this impassioned case against Kevin McCarthy, and he flat out said, you know, that he can't be trusted. So he is someone who has made very clear that he does not necessarily like Kevin McCarthy, and that it's just he has his differences with him, and he's unlikely to change or move his vote. Although, interestingly, again, one part of this framework agreement, as you heard in our interview, is this motion to vacate and really allowing any member to force this vote of no confidence to potentially oust a speaker. And that is something that Gaetz said he would think about if that threshold went from 5 lawmakers down to 1. And again, in this framework agreement, it looks like that number has now come down to 1. So again, is that enough to move someone like Matt Gaetz? Unclear. But definitely, you know, there is some personality involved in this, although some members say it's not. But some of it is just a sense that McCarthy has been too much of a moderate member. And so from some of these hardline conservatives, it's just very difficult for them to feel that as a conservative, he will truly have their backs, that they feel like he will just say anything, do anything to get along. And so that is kind of where those trust issues are really kind of creating this schism among many members, especially those who remain opposed to the leader.
Speaking of trust, it was interesting, you know, that you raised that point, because when we were speaking with Bob Costa earlier, he had interviewed a lawmaker who, you know, described, you know, Congressman Perry described, was talking about Kevin McCarthy and the framework, and Bob asked point blank, do you trust Kevin McCarthy? And the response to that was, I trust the framework of the agreement. It was not a yes that we heard from Congressman Perry. So, Nicole, to your point there, what does all of this suggest about how this Republican majority will move forward beyond just this issue of the speakership over the next 2 years?
Well, I think if they hope to be an effective conference, they are going to have to work through some of those trust issues. And, you know, granted, look, we have seen this on the other side of the aisle as well. I mean, just in a different iteration. I mean, you'll remember certainly with Democrats when they were negotiating that big Build Back Better package that didn't ultimately materialize in full. But there was a lot of mistrust between more moderate members of the party and more progressives. And so similarly, although, again, much different dynamics, you know, there are divides between more moderate factions of the Republican Party and more conservatives, particularly those who are part of this Trump or MAGA wing. And I think it's also worth pointing out, especially because today is January 6th, that many of these people who have been hardliners and who have been opposed to the leader are also some of the same lawmakers who blocked certification of the 2020 election. Even some of those who did ultimately flip their votes, like Scott Perry and like Andy Biggs and like Matt Gaetz. So that is something I think also to keep in mind, I think, as we discuss this process and how it plays out, how we got to this point, but also how Republicans move past it going forward.
Yeah, Nicole, it is all connected. And for our viewers, we do expect President Biden to be holding a special event in honor of those who he says protected the Capitol on that day 2 years ago. When it happens, we'll bring it to you live. You're watching the House floor right now as the 13th round of voting gets underway. Nicole Killian is there. Kevin McCarthy has increased his vote share from, just over 200. It was 214 in the 12th round. He needs 218. That could happen here this hour. and we will have a new Speaker of the House. Nicole, you were speaking about, as you've been running around speaking with Congress people, trying to nail down, okay, why are you flipping your vote? Why are you not flipping your vote? There's also a human factor here. Here we are, Friday afternoon, before the weekend. All these folks in Congress brought their friends and family in town to watch them either be re-sworn into Congress or sworn in for the first time. We heard also that there was some swearing in the chamber among Republicans when they voted against Kevin McCarthy. Speak to us about just how maybe there's something we can't see. How much has this week worn people down there in the Capitol?
Well, again, I think it depends who you talk to. Some people are worn down, some people are invigorated and, think that this is part of the process, especially among many Republicans. They feel like this is the first time they've actually had a chance to actually debate something of merit on the House floor. But, for the families, it is a difficult period of time. I remember on the first day of Congress, it was full of people with their spouses and their children and, aunts, uncles, and the like roaming the halls, everybody really upbeat and excited. And as the day went on, you could kind of see people wondering like, oh gosh, when is this going to be over? You'd see kids falling asleep in their parents' laps, or, we saw some kids licking ice cream. So, they had to do things to keep themselves occupied. We're not seeing that so much anymore, probably because many of them had to go home. And that really is the unfortunate thing, because this is kind of like an orientation week, a second orientation week for many of these members, an opportunity to take that photo next to the speaker, the ceremonial swearing in, and, most of them were robbed of that opportunity. So much so that Speaker Nancy Pelosi, the former speaker, suggested, there should be a process. Maybe the dean, maybe someone could swear these folks in at least so they can get that photo and they could get that picture and then let the Congress carry on with its business until this gets resolved. So, it is something that has been unfortunate for especially a lot of these new members who this is kind of their first experience and opportunity here in Congress. But certainly I'm sure it will be a memorable one for all of them after this is all said and done.
Memorable indeed. All right, Nicole Killian on Capitol Hill. Nicole, thank you.
Nicole's going to get in contact with folks there. We're going to continue to follow developments throughout the day. You can watch everything live at cbsnews.com/now. We're standing by for a special event at the White House honoring the heroes from January 6th. Stay right where you are.
Original documentary from CBS reports tensions rising between a powerful country and a vital island.
The supply of this technology came grinding to a halt. The world would grind to a halt.
Absolutely.
As Taiwan faces threats and aggression,
Taiwan is on the front line, and we understand our responsibility as a democracy. We cannot fall.
CBS News examines whether they can defend themselves.
Putin, Ukraine, China, Taiwan, there are manifestations of the battle between autocracy and democracy. And that is a fight that we're all engaged in.
Defending Taiwan, now streaming on the free CBS News app. When weather turns extreme,
states from the plains to the northeast are bracing for more than 2 feet of heavy snow.
Every second counts.
This is a monster winter storm.
CBS News and the Weather Channel bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
There's a wrinkle in the forecast, the accumulating ice.
You'll have time to get prepared.
Take precautions before you head out.
Feel the forecast on the CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell.
Stories that inform.
Or you can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be?
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
The carnage in our nation's schools has become painfully repetitive.
Not one more child!
School shootings have parents fighting mad.
I promised my daughter I was going to fight. It's going to keep on happening.
And teachers taking lessons in how to fight back.
This is an exercise. We approach it as it's you or them.
It shouldn't have to be your teacher's job to protect your life.
But will the battle over gun control
People are afraid that they're going to lose their gun rights altogether.
be the hardest lesson of all?
The exercise, you're having to shoot at an adult. Are you prepared to have to kill one of your students?
Guns in the Classroom, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Today marks 2 years since the storming of the Capitol on January 6th.
And Attorney General Merrick Garland says the Justice Department's investigation into the riots is far from over. The department's probe into the insurrection is the largest it's ever conducted, with more than 900 arrests and more than 950 people charged. And those charges range from unlawful trespassing to crimes as severe as seditious conspiracy.
Members of Congress held a moment of silence